And it's a little overwhelming, I know that. But what do you remember them saying that stood out to you as different about what we do in flow sheeting, which we're going to continue to talk about right now, versus what you normally do? What's something you remember?
Like the sideways thing.
Okay, the sideways thing. So again, when you take notes, it's mostly going from left to right, as opposed to when you take regular notes, you start at the top of the paper and you keep going down the page. That is a big one, and we'll walk through an example in a few minutes here. What else did they say?
Never.
He being a good student, he had his hand up, so I appreciate the response. But
Keep everything horizontal from the argument that keeps going that the person has on.
Say that one more time.
Keep it horizontal.
Keep what horizontal?
The evidence that they found for the argument, the first column.
Yeah, if we're talking about one specific argument or one specific claim, you want to keep everything lined up in a general horizontal range. So topics occupy all the horizontal space on your paper. One topic, right? It says, my claim, the topic is about whether or not we're going to save money. Anything that has to do with saving money, whenever it's said in the debate, is going to happen horizontally on my paper at the same spot. Another claim might be whether or not it violates the Constitution or if it's fair, whatever. So let's say we start arguing and we go back and forth a bunch of the debate. But on our note paper, anything that's about the Constitution or fairness is going to be in this other horizontal row. So, what would you want to say?
Color coded.
Color coded. What did they say about color coding?
Use different colors for different things.
Yeah. The simplest way, and this is a really, really useful tip, is some debaters will use lots of colors. I say at least try to start with two. Two obviously different colors that will stand out as separate on your paper and that are legible. Some colored pens are hard to read. When I was doing debates myself, I always had a red pen because they were easy to find, and I always found a green pen because green was also pretty easy to read. And I'm also a Star Wars fan, and green is always good guy lightsabers, and red is always bad guy lightsabers, except for the new stuff. Now they're getting mixed. But anyways, so yes, and so basically what I do, if let's just pretend I'm the affirmative, anything that I or one of my partners might say in a debate, I write down with the blue pen. So when I have to look at it later, I know that if it was written with the blue pen, it's something that we said. By contrast, I have an orange pen in my hand. That would be my color for the other team, if they were the negative, or even if they were the affirmative, the other team, right? If it's written in orange, it's something that they said. Now this might not seem like it's that big of a deal, but if you saw how crazy detailed those sample ones were as they were scanning over at the end, yours might not be that detailed, but there will be a lot of information on them. So the easier and the faster you can separate them, the better. The color is a simple thing, but it's a very useful thing. All right, what else do you guys remember? What else did they say that seemed different?
Don't write everything out.
No, why not?
It takes too much time and space.
You don't have time for that. Now listen, I have you guys exchange your outlines and your research before you actually have to do your flow sheet or your debate. So you're going to have a very good idea of what they're going to say. In debate tournaments, they don't get that. They are given a topic and a side, and then 15 minutes later, at most, they're debating. So they have to create their flow sheet, or at least the structure of it, on the spot. You guys will absolutely use your flow sheet during the debate and add content to it. But if you're smart, you will take their research and your research, and you will pre-flow a lot of the structure components ahead of time, so that when you do add live flowing in there during the debate, it's way more useful and it's way faster. But even still, you want to abbreviate things because not only can you write abbreviations faster, they take up less space. So finding different parts of what somebody said will be quicker. And the abbreviations really only have to make sense to you. They could be lettered abbreviations, they could be symbols. So like whenever I write that if somebody was going to argue it's going to increase taxes, I never wrote INC for increase. I just made an arrow that goes up. Because for me, I could do that fast and it made sense. Anything else you remember them saying?
Don't cram everything up into one page. Separate things.
Right. Now they're talking about what most debaters do in debate tournaments. And we're novice debaters in here. So they say use two pieces of paper, separate part of it, which is the plan, because they're talking specifically only about policy propositions. And they say put that on another piece of paper and just do your harms, which I have explained to you earlier. A harm is just a negative claim, on the separate page. I tell you guys, use big paper. Poster board's by far the easiest thing to do for this debate because you can have as much room as you need. to not only have to not write tiny, but also be able to separate things. So that would be my recommendation. Big paper, probably poster board or half a poster board. That'll help you. Good, good. Anything else?
The evidence as well.
What
Like
about
use, for each claim, like have like a line or like some sort of symbol to represent what piece of evidence was used for that claim, and then we just don't have any.
Because when people are going to give reasons, our claims, we want to make those separate. Here's why you should accept our proposition. It's going to save money. But you don't just say it's going to save money. That doesn't prove it's going to save money. You've got to prove it. You said it's going to save money. That's why we should have uniforms. Cool, fine. Prove it. Here's my proof according to this source. And then you have maybe another piece of evidence according to this source. And you're going to want to try and write that down about your own stuff, but especially about the other side. But you won't always catch everything. And you want certain things to stand out quicker than others. And so they recommend making symbols. And they said you could circle your evidence, make a dash, or make a box. I'll refer more to this here as we continue. You see I use the box ones. If you were looking up there and happen to be glancing on the board here, you might not even know what all this says, because I know it's small and some of you are further away. But you probably say, oh, I saw them do the little upside down divide sign box thing. That's evidence, right? That's my evidence, pre-flow. So yes, do some kind of symbols to make things stand out. Now, what I have here is the start of a flow sheet. I'm going to come back to that in just a second, but I want to show you what they had laid out on the paper. They used different letters, but what I'm showing you is what you would have for a 2-on-2 debate in terms of the number of columns and positions. So, the very first person to speak in a 2-on-2 debate is the first affirmative doing a constructive speech. The second person to speak is the second negative doing a cross-examination of that first constructive. Remember, we walked through this the other day. Then the third person that talks is the first negative doing a constructive speech. Then they get cross-examined by the first affirmative, and so on and so forth. If you go back over to my sample here, I didn't do the entire flow sheet, but it's got similar labels. Affirmative number 1 doing a constructive, negative number 2 doing a cross, negative 1 doing a constructive. And how do you know how many columns yours should have or what the label should be? The handout, which I still forgot to print. Terrible teacher, I know. You take that box, remember it was a table that we had, like a chart, spreadsheet thing. If you were to rotate it counterclockwise 90 degrees, all the labels would be lined up correctly. No, sorry. If you rotate it, yeah, counterclockwise 90 degrees, these labels will all be in the right spot. And I'll make sure everybody understands that when we actually get to the daily debates. But that's how you get your labels for your debate, whether you're 2-on-2 or 3-on-2. 2-on-2 debates have 12 speaking sections plus an intermission. 3-on-2 debates have 15 speaking sections plus an intermission. Okay, so just pull this stuff down for now. Let's talk about the stuff that's on the board. And I'll read what it says, because again, I know you can't all read it. So I'm just starting with a proposition that states uniforms should be mandatory in K-12. And I've already done a little bit of a rereading there, but some of these are a tiny bit longer than I would write them on my actual outline, if it was mine, so you can sort of understand them more visually. But uniforms should be mandated in K-12. Okay. You notice I'm using 3 colors, actually, in my writing. The one side, which is the affirmative, I've written with a black pen, because that's what I had when I did this sample. The negative, when they're talking, is orange. The reason I used purple in here was so you could see that this is something you can pre-plan, because this is something that you could theoretically have done exactly like I do before the debate even starts, before anybody says one word, because you're going to have your own research. So whether you're the affirmative side or the negative side, you're going to be able to pre-flow it. But you're also going to have the other team, because they're going to have to give you their research. So this is something that you guys could come into class with before you even start your debate. And so the reason I put these in purple, in the real debate, this is something that these people would say, because these are both negatives talking. So if this was really my flow sheet, I would have written them in orange, because I know it's me asking the question. But I've already looked at their research, and I've already pre-thought of some questions, regardless of what they say. And I just wanted those to stand out to you, so you know that these happened actually before the debate began. Like I said, though, in reality, I probably would use the orange, because that's pre-thought. Okay. Couple things. affirmative gets to talk first, and I didn't do harm one. Mine is CL1, and I put a little box around it for claim number 1. Well, if the affirmative, let's pretend I am the affirmative for now. The affirmative talks first, so they're going to be the top row. That's not, their first claim is that it's going to increase test scores. If we mandate school uniforms, it's going to increase test scores. Now, I don't agree with that. In fact, we already have research to debunk academic performance, but I know they're going to talk first, and they've said that that's what they're going to go over first. So, what's going to happen, regardless of the order I wanted to go through our evidence, the top row is going to be anything and everything about test scores or academic scores. So if you go over here, I have a claim in the negative constructive speech plan. It was going to be our second claim. However, they get to talk first, and they introduced it first. It's about test scores. We are saying that school success information is misleading, so we align it horizontally. It doesn't matter that we called it claim 2. Now, I had to scrunch these a little more than I wanted to, but long story short, you should be able to kind of see, and if you have your own paper, you can be able to make it a bit bigger, how it's somewhat, not perfect, but somewhat separated from the rest of it. On your own paper, you don't got to write this big, you should be able to put a gap, hopefully. Come down here. Their second claim in the constructive speech is that it's going to save money if we have school uniforms. Save families money, and then they got evidence, right? Well, here we go. Anything inside this horizontal box is going to be related to money, saving or costing. Any questions asked, any responses given, any evidence, anything. It's going to be here, regardless of when it was said in the debate. Then they talk about their plan. I started running out of whiteboard, so it really gets cramped, which is exactly what they said not to do, and I'm trying to share with you an example here. Their plan is something that we would discuss, so I would honestly put another, I wouldn't make this many lines necessarily, but I just want you to see visually where that row would be dedicated to any discussion of the plan, or problems with the plan, or questions about the plan. And then, at least at this point, if this is the only evidence that was presented in this debate hypothetically, well, we still have a whole other topic area we want to talk about, and that's the fact that it violates the First Amendment. They don't have any evidence that they presented, so we're going to make another row. It's all about First Amendment. So this bottom row is all anything discussion about First Amendment, anything we say, anything they say. Still with me? So there is some top-down, right? But more importantly is understanding that anything about saving money or costing money is going to exist somewhere in this row. You might put it way over here because the second affirmative speech might come back and bring another example and maybe more evidence, and that would be written way out here whenever they do it. And then we'd ask a question about it maybe. If you keep going, rebuttals are on here too, but they're just not on my example. And if you want to